"Mama, could you not walk around so much? I just cleaned the floors." The words cut through the silence like a cold blade. I froze mid-step in the hallway, my hand bracing against the wall to steady my still weak body. The discharge bracelet from the hospital still clung to my wrist, like an unwelcome reminder that I had only returned home 3 days ago from a triple bypass surgery. The antiseptic scent of the hospital still clung to my skin, my clothes. But what really lingered was her voice. My daughter-in-law didn't even look up from her phone. "I'm not trying to be rude," she added casually, "but it would help if we were all a little more considerate." I blinked not because of the words themselves, but because of how she said them, like I was a burden. She couldn't quite shake. "I'm sorry," I murmured, swallowing what pride I had left, and turned back toward the makeshift room they'd given me. It wasn't a room. It was the dining area stripped of its table, replaced with a cot and a plastic drawer set. A curtain had been hung to offer some illusion of privacy. There was no heating vent on this side of the condo. At night, cold air settled in my chest like regret. 3 days home, and I already understood I wasn't here because they wanted me. I was here because they couldn't justify letting me die alone. They didn't bring me home out of love. They brought me home out of guilt. And they would make me pay for that guilt every single day. Bah! I once dreamed this place would be my legacy to them. 10 years ago, I bought this condo with the plan of surprising my son and daughter-in-law on their 5th anniversary. I wanted to give them a home, a foundation. I renovated the kitchen myself, choosing countertops she'd once admired in a magazine. But before I could present the gift, I collapsed. I fainted in the backyard and woke up in a hospital bed, tubes down my throat, and my son watching me with an expression I didn't recognize, detached like I was a chore that came back from the past. After surgery, the doctor said I couldn't be left alone. That's how I ended up here, in this corner, in my own home. Not because they loved me, but because I might die and that made them nervous. I tried to help at first. I folded laundry from my cot, offered to cook, was told no. I attempted washing dishes, was told I might break them. So I started taking short walks in the morning, slow, deliberate, until I heard her whisper into her phone. She paces around like a ghost. It's creepy. That night I didn't sleep, not because of the surgery pain, but because I felt something deeper, cracking a sense of belonging. From then on, I tried to disappear, but even that wasn't enough. I overheard them talking one night. "She just sits there," my daughter-in-law said, laughing softly. "It's like having a toddler and a ghost rolled into one, and she doesn't even pay rent." Silence. No response from my son. No protest. Silence is agreement. I held on to that realization like a rosary, counting it in my heart whenever the nights got too long and the silence became unbearable. They thought I was a burden, something they tolerated, a freeloader. But what they didn't know, what they had never asked, was that this house, this 3-bedroom condo in a quiet Michigan neighborhood close to the lake with cherry trees in spring, still had my name on the deed. Sole owner. Evelyn M. Parker. They had assumed perhaps because I was old, because I'd always been generous, because I loved them. They assumed wrong. One morning I was pouring myself a glass of water, slowly, carefully, when she walked in. My daughter-in-law froze in the doorway. "Oh," she said flatly, "I thought you were still sleeping. I wasn't supposed to be awake, or moving, or frankly present." I smiled gently and said, "I'll be out of your way in a second." I moved even slower than usual. That's when she muttered it under her breath, but loud enough: "Extra baggage." I held the glass tighter as if bracing myself. She left the room, and I stood there staring out the kitchen window. The trees were bare. Winter was coming, and so was something else. They thought I had no power left. They thought I had no money, no spine, no voice. But they forgot something vital. I had the deed, and I was no one's baggage. A week later, I returned from a checkup to find my bedding rolled up, my oxygen monitor unplugged, and my few belongings stacked in a neat little pile by the coat closet. For a moment, I thought maybe they were cleaning. Then I saw the air mattress, inflated, laid out flat right next to the washer and dryer. "Hey, Mama," my daughter-in-law said, walking in with a tray of tea. "Quick update. We're just reorganizing the rooms a little. My mom's flying in from Arizona for a few weeks. You know how she hates the cold. Her knees can't handle stairs, so we figured it'd be easier for her to take your room." "Your room?" She meant the room I'd been sleeping in since surgery. The only room with a door, a heater, a window. Now that was for her mother. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded. "Don't worry." She added, setting the tray on the counter. "We made it nice and cozy in there. There's a nightlight and everything." There was the laundry room, or rather the utility closet. No windows, no closet, just linoleum floors, exposed pipes, and the steady hum of machines. And I was 72, recovering from open heart surgery, and they had moved me into a room where they stored mop buckets. I stepped inside. The air smelled like detergent and mold. The mattress barely fit between the washer and wall. On top was the same blanket I'd brought from my old house, thin, faded, fraying at the edges. Not even good enough for guests. No one asked if I was okay. No one checked how I was sleeping. They were too busy doting on her Donna. That was her name. Donna arrived 2 days later with matching suitcases and a silk scarf around her neck. She handed me a bag of almonds and smiled. "You must be Evelyn. I've heard so much." They gave her the guest room, the ensuite bathroom, tea every night, opinions on throw pillows. They asked her how much salt she liked in her soup. When Donna coughed, someone ran for a thermometer. When I coughed, they turned up the TV. I watched it all from my new corner, past the kitchen, behind the hallway closet. I watched her walk into my home and take my place. Not just in the room, but in the family. The kitchen used to be my sanctuary. It wasn't just a room. It was a rhythm. I knew exactly how long to let the garlic sweat in butter before adding the onions. I knew the weight of each spice jar by heart, the click of the old gas knob, the hum of the fridge door when it closed just right. It was the one place, maybe the last, where I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. Until Donna moved in. From the moment her suitcases touched the floor, the house began rearranging itself around her. And the kitchen, my final refuge, became her empire. It started with small things. She moved my cast iron skillet to the garage, said it was too heavy, too dangerous on glass stovetops. Then she replaced the spice rack, said the old spices were outdated. She brought in organic blends that smelled like mulch and tasted like wet leaves. I tried to make a simple chicken soup one afternoon, reaching for my broth base and thyme. She took the spoon gently from my hand and said with a smile, "Oh, Evelyn, let me do that." I have a lighter touch. A lighter touch. I backed away, not from weakness, but from restraint. By the end of that week, I wasn't allowed to cook anymore. Not directly told, just maneuvered out. The knives moved, the labels changed, the pantry reorganized so high I couldn't reach a thing. One evening, I shuffled to the fridge and opened a container of leftover rice. I was hungry, No one had offered me dinner. My daughter-in-law appeared behind me just as I dipped in a spoon. "Oh, Mama, we actually made something special tonight," she said quickly. "I'm not sure the rice will go with it. Could you maybe ask first next time? Ask to eat in the home I bought." I nodded. Another layer of silence sealed over me. Later that week, I tried to make toast. The toaster was gone, replaced by a fancy air fryer I didn't understand. Donna swooped in. "These machines are smarter than they look," she said, taking the bread from my hand. "No offense, none taken. Just add it to the list." That night, I sat on the edge of my mattress sipping lukewarm tea and listening to the dryer rumble beside me. I didn't eat dinner, but hunger didn't hurt as much as humiliation. I was becoming a ghost, a whisper, a presence to be managed. I made myself small enough to fit between the broom closet and the recycling bin. I swallowed my voice like gravel, because if I spoke, it might shake loose the last thread of peace I had left. And yet, even as they shut me out, they didn't realize I was watching. I was remembering. I was writing. That night, I didn't sleep. The machines hummed. The dryer rumbled. But what truly kept me awake was the weight of their laughter. From the living room, I could hear them, my son, my daughter-in-law, and Donna watching TV, laughing, sharing popcorn. I hadn't been invited. I hadn't been acknowledged. Donna laughed so hard she wheezed. I heard my son rush to bring her water, and I sat in the shadows of the laundry room, gripping a notebook I had started to keep. A small spiral-bound one I'd found in a drawer. At first it was to pass the time, but soon it became something else. I began documenting everything, every insult masked as a suggestion, every judgment slipped into a joke, every silence that spoke volumes. "She keeps milk in the back of the fridge like we don't have a system. She wore the same sweater 3 days in a row. Does she even shower? I swear she eavesdrops. It's creepy. Page after page." They thought I wasn't paying attention. They thought I was fading. But I was archiving. Snurnen. One night I heard it all too clearly. It was late, past midnight. I'd gotten up to sip water, careful not to wake anyone. The hallway light was off, but their voices carried. "She's not going to last much longer," my daughter-in-law whispered. "Babe, don't say that," my son replied, half asleep. "I'm just being honest," she said, sharper now. "She's declining. And when she's gone, the condo is ours." Pause. "Then I mean legally right. She never signed it over, but she doesn't have a will, so we inherit automatically." My son didn't answer, just sighed. "Yeah, I guess." I stood behind the wall, heart pounding. They weren't waiting for me to get better. They were waiting for me to die. I didn't cry. Not then. I just walked back to the laundry room. Step by aching step, the water glass trembling in my hand. That night, I wrote in big, bold letters at the top of my notebook, "Ghosts have ears," and I underlined it twice. The next morning, I smiled when Donna passed me in the hallway. She nodded smug. She thought she was winning. But that's the thing about ghosts. We don't scream. We don't haunt. We remember. And we wait. I kept the notebook under my mattress. It became my ritual after dinner. When they were busy in the living room, with wine and laughter, I wrote. Every word they let slip. Every plan they whispered too loudly. Then came the night I heard the worst of it. I had returned from a walk, slow, deliberate. My legs were steadier, my heart stronger. But I still pretended to shuffle like I was fading. It made them more comfortable to think I was disappearing. That afternoon, I heard my son in the kitchen pacing. He always paced when he lied. Yeah, I checked, he said on the phone. It's still in her name. Pause. But look, the bank said we could move forward if we had a signature. Doesn't have to be notarized. Another pause. She's old man. She won't know. Hell, I could sign for her. Her handwriting's like chicken scratch anyway. I stopped breathing. Every word after that sliced like broken glass. Burnt. I know it's technically fraud. He laughed. But it's not like she's going to sue us. She can't even open a PDF, a beat. We need the loan, okay? This kitchen remodel isn't going to pay for itself. A remodel. He was willing to forge my signature for countertops. I backed away from the hallway silently. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't ache. This time, I wasn't broken. I was clear. I called Walter, my old lawyer, the one who helped me buy the condo after my husband died. They're trying to take a loan out on the condo, I said simply. Walter didn't gasp, didn't ask dramatic questions. He just asked, "Do you want to sell?" Yes, I said. No hesitation. He paused. You sure I gave them my health, my money, my silence? I am done giving. By nightfall, the paperwork was in my email. Walter already had a buyer lined up, an older widow moving to Michigan to be near her daughter. Cash offer. No inspection. I printed the documents at the library the next morning wearing my best coat. I signed them in a quiet cafe 3 blocks away while sipping chamomile tea. Walter handled the rest. The closing date, 10 days. 10 days to remain invisible. 10 days to stay quiet. 10 days to let them keep believing they were in control. And then nothing would belong to them anymore. The contract was signed. The sale was underway. And yet nobody knew. Each morning they passed by me with smug indifference, still plotting tile colors for their dream kitchen. Still sipping wine they didn't offer me, still treating the home like it belonged to them. They didn't know they were already trespassing. And I was planning something else. That same evening I called Walter again. I want to update my will, I told him. He chuckled warmly. Got a pen ready? We spoke for over an hour. He remembered everything: my late husband's estate, the clause I'd insisted on for sole ownership, and even the first name of the county clerk who filed our original deed. I was never forgetful, just quiet. But now my quiet had purpose. The new will was simple. In the event of my death, the condo would be donated to a local women's shelter for single mothers starting over. My pension, jewelry, and savings would be split between 2 charities I'd quietly supported for years. My son and his wife, they would receive nothing, not out of spite, but out of clarity. They had made their feelings toward me unmistakable. They had treated me as a burden, so I lifted that burden from their inheritance. Walter offered to send a notary. I said no need. I had 2 old friends from the senior center, Ada and Lucille, who still owed me a favor. They came by, brought cookies signed as witnesses, and left with a wink. That night, I slid the signed will into the same metal filing box as the deed. I taped a note to the inside lid. If found, assume the owner knew exactly what she was doing. And for the first time in years, I slept soundly. Not from comfort, but from control. The morning of the closing, I woke earlier than usual. I dressed in my best navy wool coat, the one I hadn't worn in years, and pinned my mother's brooch just above my heart. I didn't make coffee for myself. I just waited. At 9:45 a.m., a knock at the door. My son opened it. A woman stood outside with a clipboard. Evelyn Parker. He paused. That's my... He hesitated. That's my mother. She looked past him and smiled at me. Ready to go, Mrs. Parker? I nodded, took one last glance around the condo. The kitchen I had designed, the hallway I had limped through, the walls that had heard my silence. Then I walked out. No tears, no goodbye. Just a key left with the notary and a single envelope taped to the front door. Jart. Inside the envelope was a copy of the signed deed transfer, a copy of my final will, and a handwritten note. This home belonged to me, not just on paper, but in memory, sacrifice, and silence. You were never the heirs. You were just the tenants, and the lease has expired. Evelyn M. Parker. I didn't return home. I didn't need to. Instead, I checked into a private care facility. Walter recommended a quiet residence, surrounded by gardens, books, and windows that opened toward a pond filled with lilies. I paid for 2 years in full with a portion of the condo sale, the rest of the money already transferring to the charities named in my will. By noon, I was unpacked. By evening, I was reading again something I hadn't done in months. Back at the condo, I imagined the moment they returned, expecting control, expecting comfort. Instead, they found a box. They must have arrived in the afternoon, shopping bags in hand, maybe still laughing about tile samples or debating between quartz and granite, maybe still dreaming of their new kitchen. Then, the silence. Then, the open door. Then, the empty closets. Then, the box. Inside the deed. The will. The truth. And at the top, my note written on gold-trimmed paper. You had a home because I gave it. Now you have a lesson because you took too much. Evelyn M. Parker. They called me 5 times, then 6, then from Donna's phone, then block number, then private number. I didn't answer. They didn't deserve my voice. Not anymore, because they hadn't heard it when it mattered. At the residence, someone smiled when I walked into the dining room. Someone asked me if I wanted tea. Someone remembered my name. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. No longer a ghost. No longer waiting to die. Just Evelyn. Weeks passed. Then one quiet Tuesday in April, Margaret knocked gently on my door. She never barged in. Always gentle. Evelyn, she said, you remember Joan from water aerobics. I nodded. Joan with the wind chime laugh. She's also Donna's cousin. I put down my tea. Margaret stepped inside, voice low, but not secretive. They're divorced, she said. 3 months after you left, Joan said the day your son found the box, he didn't yell, didn't shout. He just sat down on the floor, like a child who lost his mother in a store. And Donna, I asked. Margaret leaned forward. She cried, she said. Ugly cried. Not because she was sorry, but because the house was gone. The dream kitchen. The inheritance. The comfort. I stirred my tea slowly. He tried to get her to stay. Margaret added. But she said. Margaret hesitated, then spoke. You let her rot. What else do you let happen under your nose? After that, I heard little else, only that Donna had moved back to Arizona, that she took the car, and the savings, and whatever was left of his reputation. My son. He stayed behind. He moved into a studio apartment. No kitchen island, no Donna, no mama to sign for anything. Joan said he started doing carpentry, building shelves and small furniture for families that could still afford more than he ever would again. The irony didn't escape me. Sometimes I wondered, did he remember? Did he remember the day he asked me to move in? "We'll take care of you, Mom. You'll have your own space. This is your home, too." Did he mean it? Or was it just something people say to old women when they need her signature? I didn't dwell on it. I had my garden walks in the morning, book club on Wednesdays, volunteers who read aloud at night while I sat with my tea. A reading room was named after me at the shelter. No plaque can replace a son. But peace doesn't always come wrapped in reconciliation. Sometimes peace comes quietly, like a closed door that no one knocks on anymore, and that's okay. One morning, Margaret brought up his name again. "He's rebuilding," she said. "Not just furniture, but himself." I nodded. She paused. "You still think he deserves better?" I stirred my tea. "Not from me," I said softly. "From himself." Margaret stared at me a long time. Then she smiled, but not kindly, just honestly. "You're better than me," she said. "I would have danced the day he lost her." I smiled back, not out of joy, but out of something heavier. "Losing someone you never truly had," I said, "isn't a tragedy. It's a revelation." Have you ever felt invisible? Not because you were quiet, but because they chose not to see you. Have you ever stood in a room full of family and felt like a stranger? Like furniture, like something that used to matter, but now just gets in the way? Have you ever been made to feel like your time had passed, that your worth faded the moment your hair turned gray, or your breath became a little more tired? Let me tell you something, sweetheart. You are not extra. And the world forgets women like us. Mothers who folded their dreams into casseroles. Grandmothers who held families together with stitched tablecloths and silent prayers. Women who sacrifice so much only to be told they are too loud, too needy, too there. But let me remind you, silence is not weakness. It's a strategy. We watch. We remember. We wait. And when we act, we don't need to shout. We just do it with truth and a quiet that shakes the ground. My story is not revenge. It's restoration of dignity, of voice, of self, because I was never just a burden, never just a body in the hallway, never just someone waiting to die. I was and still am Evelyn M. Parker. So if you're watching this and you feel forgotten, if your hands still remember the shape of heartbreak, if your name has been replaced with her, she, or worse, a sigh, then know this: you're not alone. You still matter. You don't fade. You rise. And one last thing. To the ones who once called me extra baggage, thank you. Because of you, I remembered who I am. Because of you, I finally wrote myself back into the story, too. If you've ever felt like a burden, like your story didn't matter anymore, like the world moved on without you, know this: you are not invisible. You are not extra. You are not done. Your voice still matters. Your dignity still stands. Your presence still carries power. And if they forgot who you are, then let today be the day you remind them. Because silence is not surrender. It is strength sharpened with memory. And women like you don't fade, you rise.